Greetings! This is Karina Klishin in the studio. Today, here's what we're talking about. Ukrainian armed forces are smashing Russians, Soledar, Kupiansk, Melitopol, even Voronezh. Fireworks everywhere. There's a water shortage in Donbas. In Donetsk and Mariupol, there's nothing but dew instead of water. The Kremlin boasts of victories, but conscripts are dying in the Kursk region. The Ukrainian armed forces have been driven out. So how does that add up? Putin talks about peace, while demanding Donbas, Crimea, and official status for the Russian language in Ukraine. All this and more in just a few seconds. But right now, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, Ukraine Today, so you don't lose track of us on YouTube. Well then, let's get started. While Putin and Trump were pontificating about big politics in Alaska, Russian troops are swarming in like cockroaches trying to seize our land. But the Ukrainian armed forces are responding harshly, targeting both manpower and logistics. In Soledar, our airstrike hit the occupiers' command post. Everything was blown to pieces. The Russians spent a long time digging out their own. In Kupiansk, the Russian grunts, those hardened and determined soldiers, fancied they'd easily take the strategic city by August 24th, a date they had optimistically set for their swift victory. They came at our positions with tanks and armored vehicles. But the Ukrainian armed forces gave them a warm welcome. And in occupied Melitopol, there was a real fire show. Our intelligence eliminated an ammunition depot along with the soldiers. The explosion happened just as the Russians were arriving in a truck. At least 6 Marines and a UAV crew have been sent on permanent leave. In short, the depot is blazing and secondary explosions are going off. The occupiers even called for 4 ambulances, but I think it's too late. And the Atesh partisans are on fire in the occupied Luhansk region. They disabled a relay cabinet on the railway used by Russian boys to transport equipment, ammunition, and fuel to the front. It's getting hot for the Russians in the Kursk region as well. The occupiers tried to haul a cannon across a blown-up bridge with a truck, planning to shell Sumy afterwards. However, our guys acted precisely. The result, as they say, is on the screen. And the cherry on top, her drones paid a visit to the Voronezh region. The railway station in Lysky got what it deserved: 10 explosions. The station came to a halt and so did the trains. The occupiers' supply of ammunition and manpower has been disrupted. The HUR confirms Lysky is a key logistics hub for Putin's army. While the so-called great strategists keep talking, our defenders are getting the job done. So don't forget to support them with donations. They're the ones keeping us safe. While the Ukrainian armed forces strike the enemy along the entire front line, the occupied Donbas is facing a water crisis. Where 14 years ago, Euro 2012 was in full swing and Donetsk shone with progress and infrastructure, now there's the Russian world, which has liberated the locals from their water supply.
There are a ton of people, damn it. Look at that line. It's a kilometer long. They're helping people like Shalina, for fuck's sake.
Donetsk residents are demanding that the DNR authorities explain why water flows freely in restaurants and clubs, but not in their apartments.
I'm a third-degree disabled person. I have a compression fracture of my spine. I have to carry water, the nearest place with light. I have to walk 2 blocks to get water. What kind of mockery is this, honestly? We haven't seen any water since July 22nd. I live on the 9th floor. There's no one to help.
It's even more fun in occupied Mariupol. There, the Russian world supplies water on a schedule, but with a catch. It's in the pipes, but the houses are empty. You might say it's an artificial crisis? Absolutely. Getting water once every 48 hours for a couple of hours isn't water supply, it's a joke. Now the question, Putin is liberating Ukrainian lands. And then what? As we can see, he's already saved Donbas to a life without water or hope. Here's the real Russian world for you, drowning in its own lies.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And these lies are everywhere in Russia. After Alaska, Putin claimed that he supposedly wants the war to end as soon as possible.
Of course, we profoundly respect the considered position of the American administration, which clearly sees the urgent and pressing need for a swift and immediate end to the ongoing hostilities. Well, we would like that too. We would like to resolve all issues by peaceful means.
At the same time, Reuters publishes yet another set of demands from the bunker dictator. The Kremlin demands that the Ukrainian armed forces withdraw from Donbas, recognize Crimea as Russian, lift sanctions, prohibit Ukraine from joining NATO, grant official status to the Russian language, and of course restore all rights to the Russian Orthodox Church. And in return, Putin promises not to attack Ukraine. Seriously? Of course, we totally believe that. And do you remember how Putin boasted that the Kursk region had been cleared of the Ukrainian armed forces? But after their triumphant reports, at least 5 Russian conscripts died according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. If the enemy has been driven out, how did these young conscripts end up under fire? And the Kursk region is not liberated. Why were the recruits thrown into the meat grinder? The answers are in our report.
Only professional soldiers, specifically officers and contract servicemen, are actively taking part in this particular military operation at this present time. There are no conscripts at all, and we do not plan to involve them.
They're not there, but they keep dying. After the supposed complete liberation of the Kursk region, at least 5 Russian conscripts died in the area. The publication Verstka reports that at least half a dozen young men died in the Kursk region after the command reported the region's liberation. Journalists gathered information from open sources, including relatives, friends, and former fellow servicemen.
He left the military enlistment office in the city of Nefteyugansk for Kursk as a conscript. He wasn't on the special military operation, it was just regular conscript service.
This message was posted on social media by the relatives of Artem Borodin, who died 2 months ago. The 20-year-old had served only 6 months. Like many others, he did not have sufficient training, yet he was stationed near the combat zone, where, according to the Russian command, there had long been no enemy presence and the situation was calm.
Many commanders make rash statements in hopes of advancing their own careers. Ordinary guys have to pay for their words, often at the cost of their own lives. Unfortunately, this practice is widespread.
One of the main reasons analysts cite for the deaths of conscripts in the Kursk region is sending them to patrol the border in an area where sabotage and reconnaissance groups from both sides are constantly active. Recent high school graduates have little chance of survival. For example, this is how the life of 22-year-old Mikhail Ulasenko from Noyabrsk was cut short. According to local television, he was drafted into service in November of last year. On May 31st, while carrying out an assignment, Ulasenko was killed by a landmine.
A conscripted soldier has the same status as any other serviceman, whether a contract soldier or a mobilized one, in terms of rights and responsibilities. And he can very well, and as we see, they were in the combat zone.
The same fate befell 18-year-old Ivan Nizegorodov from the village of Iznesnya Quarry in the Perm region. He was drafted into service in the fall of last year. Already this year, on June 6th, a post with his photograph appeared in local social media groups.
He was carrying out tasks to guard and defend the state border and died while patrolling the border of the Kursk region.
Since July 8th, 21-year-old Vladimir Zolotuev from the village of Kolbon in the Zabaikalsky region, who was drafted into the army in November of last year, has stopped making contact. On July 24th, the military commissar and the head of the Kolbon administration came to his mother and informed her that Vladimir had died defending the border of the Kursk region. He did not sign a contract, according to a local social media group. Dozens of mothers of Russian conscripts have already faced the same situation before.
I couldn't even possibly imagine that a young conscript would be sent there to fight in such a conflict. He only held a rifle twice, right? That was just for a photo. What kind of soldier is he?
On July 13th, in the Kursk region, 20-year-old conscript Vladislav Borodin from the village of Karakulino in Udmurtia was killed, his mother told journalists from Verstka. According to the woman, she was told nothing about the circumstances of her son's death. "No one is saying anything, we don't know anything," said the mother of the deceased. At the same time, while the boy was still in touch like many other current conscripts, he said that they were not receiving any combat training.
All this time, while they were serving in the unit, we communicated with them daily, and everyone said the same thing. Everyone said they were being taught to line up and march. Even when they were assigned to patrol the perimeter of the unit, they were given a dagger instead of a rifle because they were untrained.
At the same time, unlike the relatives of the deceased, the Russian command understands that the situation in the Kursk region has still not been brought under control, and the response to this has already followed. The scandalously notorious Russian Armed Forces General Alexander Lapin, who is blamed for the failure of the defense of the Kursk region, has been dismissed from the army.
However, the decree has not yet been published. We are waiting. If this is true, then the removal of such a general is highly symbolic. At the same time, information suggests he was not removed but dismissed from the Russian armed forces. Apparently, a thorough investigation is brewing in the Kursk region into circumstances that led to the deaths of thousands of people.
Evgeny Nikiforov was appointed in his place, but so far he has also failed to improve the situation in the Kursk region. The border remains completely outside of Russia's control. At the same time, this is still not the zone of the so-called special military operations.
Let me emphasize, conscripted soldiers are not participating and will not participate in combat operations.
And officially no combat operations are being conducted there. The command has reported that everything is under control. In other words, this is one of the likely places where new conscripts will serve their mandatory military service.
The Kremlin continues to drown in absurdity. In Russia, the Taliban are called kind Barmalis, and people are encouraged to travel to Afghanistan. Oleg Korobchenko, the minister of Tatarstan, insists that it's possible to be friends with militants who execute women. Meanwhile, Moscow is expelling Azerbaijanis. The Russian Ministry of Labor has banned hiring them for work. It seems this is a new blow to Baku. How are relations between Azerbaijan and Putin's Russia rapidly heading for disaster? Find out in our report.
A new round of escalating tensions between Moscow and Baku. This time, it was the Ministry of Labor of the aggressor country that decided to add fuel to the fire. The latter has sent out its directives to the regions, instructing them not to hire Azerbaijanis anymore.
Until a number of foreign policy and interdepartmental issues related to cooperation between the Russian Federation and the Republic of Azerbaijan are resolved, it is recommended to temporarily suspend the practice of employing Azerbaijani citizens for vacant positions.
As for those Azerbaijanis who had already been hired at that time, the Ministry of Labor strongly recommends reporting them to the relevant authorities, specifying their first and last names, date of birth, position, and information about the documents permitting each such employee to stay in Russia. After such an order from above, most enterprises promptly reported that they supposedly had no such citizens and were not planning to hire any.
We inform you that according to information provided by MUP Gorsovet, MUP Vodochistka, AO City Baths, AO Specialized Trust for Public Services, and LLC Specialized City Cleaning Company, there are no employed citizens of the Republic of Azerbaijan among the current staff of the above-mentioned enterprises. There are no plans to hire citizens of the Republic of Azerbaijan.
In fact, all Azerbaijanis at these enterprises were retroactively dismissed just to be on the safe side. We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of workers who every day in major cities do the dirty and poorly paid jobs instead of Russians. The paper manual from the Russian Ministry of Labor has effectively become an unofficial ban on employment for people from Azerbaijan and marks yet another round of deteriorating relations between the Kremlin and Baku.
Individual crises in their relationship are becoming even more pronounced. They are simply impossible to contain. And these crises are creating new consequences. Consequences such as arrests in Yekaterinburg, arrests in Baku, and the closure of Russian infrastructure here. Now, for example, there are bombings of Sokar's infrastructure, that is, facilities belonging to the state oil company of Azerbaijan in Ukraine.
Now, a de facto ban on employment in Russia has been added to this list. Thus, analysts explain, Putin is using his favorite tactic to try to pressure his opponent, once again threatening Aliyev with persecution of Azerbaijani citizens. Let me remind you that according to various estimates, there may be up to 2 million such people in Russia. However, even Russian propagandists are forced to admit that the Kremlin's latest bluff has failed.
Very often throughout history, countries have significantly miscalculated their own strength and power, subsequently embarking upon reckless and ill-advised adventures. It usually ended badly for them.
And this time too, over the past few years, Putin has turned Azerbaijan from a loyal partner into an enemy of Russia.
First, Russia lost what it had gained after 2020, and now it is losing what it had since the early 90s. And this is a gradual process. I think that instead of reacting so irritably on a public level and so on, the Russian Federation should in fact transform its involvement in the ongoing processes in the South Caucasus region.
Instead, the Kremlin is actively trying to show Baku how bad things will be without the Russian Federation. But here's the catch. As it turns out, without Putin, Aliyev and his country have only been doing better.
To put it in mathematical terms, you just remove Russia from the equation and it becomes easy to solve.
Meanwhile, Azerbaijan is actively building a friendship with Armenia, which was previously unfriendly towards it. It seems both countries are tired of years of conflict and are ready for a long-awaited truce. For example, the president of Azerbaijan has ordered the dissolution of all organizations created to promote the idea that Armenia is Azerbaijani land. In connection with the signing of the declaration in Washington between Baku and Yerevan, the Azerbaijani authorities have decided to formally renounce territorial claims against the neighboring state. Aliyev is also actively building relations with the United States.
This year, a charter on strategic partnership between Azerbaijan and the United States was signed. It covers energy, investments, artificial intelligence, technology, and most importantly, cooperation and collaboration in the field of security and arms supplies.
Meanwhile, due to Putin's aggressive policies, relations with Azerbaijan are only getting worse. And the new round of confrontation between Moscow and Baku only intensifies the conflict between the two states.
While Putin is supposedly saving the world, his personal life is a real detective story shrouded in mystery. Vladimir Putin and Alina Kabaeva have two sons, Ivan and of course Vladimir. But their mother is pretending to be the assistant Olesya Fedina. What is this bloody Tsar really hiding? Here are the details of this story for your attention.
The mother of Putin and Kabaeva's sons is a completely different woman. What is the Kremlin dictator hiding, and why doesn't Alina Kabaeva raise her own children? We're telling you right now. In this photo, Olympic champion and Russian president's lover Alina Kabaeva is surrounded by two children and governesses who have literally thrown themselves into the line of fire to protect them as well as any security detail would. One of them is Olesya Fedina, who is Kabaeva's cousin.
Putin generally hides all his children, including those born, as they say, in lawful marriage to Lyudmila Putina, right? Well, everyone knows perfectly well about Ekaterina Tikhonova and, accordingly, Maria Vorontsova. Yes, but even though everyone knows that these are Putin's daughters, even Putin himself refers to them, these women, they don't bear his last name, right? And accordingly, their lives are shrouded in quite a bit of mystery.
Journalists from the publication Dossier, citing their sources, have found out that Putin and Kabaeva have two sons. The boys are named Ivan and Vladimir, and they were born in 2015 and 2019 respectively. Like their schizophrenic father, the children live in isolation and rarely appear in public.
Well, for example, in the GRU, and I think it was the same in the FSB and the KGB, unmarried men were not accepted. So where he actually got this rather strange, peculiar idea that he absolutely needs to completely hide his own children from public view is entirely and completely unclear, except perhaps due to some of his very own deeply ingrained personal phobias and anxieties.
According to journalists, Putin's children, Ivan and Vladimir, together with Kabaeva, live at his residence in Valdai and also often spend time in Sochi and in Crimea, which is temporarily occupied by the Russians. There is always a lot of staff around the younger Putin'S, and teachers for them are sought abroad. The selection of nannies and governesses is handled by their stepmother, Alina Kabaeva, while Olesya Fedina, the very cousin of Kabaeva, poses as the boy's mother for the sake of secrecy.
And even when Putin was married to his wife, Lyudmila, we saw her very rarely. You could count on one hand the number of foreign trips she took part in, and as for any kind of activity on her part, we never heard anything at all. There's another explanation. That, for example, he might actually have a different sexual orientation. And in this sense, Kabaeva isn't really a full-fledged wife either, but rather, in a way, serves as a kind of cover operation. Well, the children might be his, or maybe they're not his children at all.
Alina Kabaeva and Vladimir Putin first met back in 2001. At that time, Kabaeva was only 18 years old. In 2013, the master of the Kremlin announced his divorce from his wife Lyudmila, with whom he had lived for almost 30 years and had two daughters. The media are also widely circulating another photo of a young woman who looks exactly like the Russian dictator. The photo is of Elizaveta Krivonogik. Her mother is a shareholder of Bank Russia and the National Media Group. Krivonogik now lives in France and goes by the names Elizaveta Rudnova or Luisa Rozova.
That's all for now. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you next time.